welcome back to another episode of Behind the Lens. Today, we're talking to the writer and director of Fountaine and the Vengeful Nun That Wouldn't Die, James Dean. I'm your host, John the host, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jason Alt.
Hi, I'm Jason the co-host. That's my Twitter handle, Jason the co-host. I'm like the Andy Richter of this show. Because John saw how much I weigh, he's like, you're Andy Richter.
That's not fair.
But you didn't go to Harvard, so you're a worse Andy Richter because you haven't controlled the universe even once.
John and Andy or Jason, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here, James.
Thank you for coming, James Dean. Not that James Dean, but also not that James Dean either.
Right. We had a field day with that on the review, which I'm sure you've seen. So
there are lots of James Deans not to be. So like I'm happy that you're being a non-problematic one.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
This is your directorial debut, sir. And a mighty fine one, might I say. Fontaine, the Vengeful Nun Who Wouldn't Die is a pure genre film in the most undistilled sense of the word. What specific nunsploitation film sparked your interest into setting your feature debut into this very niche genre, James?
Well, I wouldn't say there was just one. There's quite a few different movies that I pulled from, I feel like, to kind of put this together. Everything from stuff that had nothing to do with exploitation. Well, yeah, really nothing to do with exploitation. Like there's an arm chop sequence that I completely ripped off Tenebrae's beautiful arm chop sequence. I don't know, like I love Lady Snowblood. That's not a nunsploitation. School of the Holy Beast. Now that is a nunsploitation, and anyone who hasn't seen that, I would highly recommend checking that out because it's almost like artsploitation in that it's exploitation, but it's so artfully done. And it's still disgusting at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so weird to watch something that's so disgusting yet, like it's so artistically done. You know, and the way they paint the frame with light, it's beautiful. But so Lady Snowblood, I mean, of course, Thriller, they call her One Eye. I mean, you know,
yeah.
I could go on and on. Yeah, there's quite a few. Miss 45. I mean, I could go on and on. There's direct lines that were stolen or lifted from Peter Jackson's earlier movies, which I absolutely love. Peter Jackson's earlier stuff. You know,
oh my god, yeah, like Dead Alive, like even Frighteners was sort of early in his career. Yeah, we talked about Frighteners on this cast.
We love Frighteners.
That's a big favorite of ours. Yeah.
And I mean, if you're gonna pay homage to a film, I mean, Tenebrae is a banger.
Yeah.
Like, I did. Now, you know, I think a lot of people that are going to watch this on face value are going to be like, oh, Tarantino vibes. But I mean, there are some serious Argento vibes in here, which is really cool. Good Argento.
I love Argento.
Was there bad Argento, John?
Dracula?
Oh,
2000?
Okay. Nicholas. All right, yeah you're right.
Yeah.
The last film in the Three Mothers series, and I'm not I'm not talking crap on Argento. He's amazing, but that one definitely. I remember pumping my nephew up who had never seen an Argento film. I was like, your fucking mind is gonna be blown away. You know, we went there and saw it, and like he was very impressed and loved the gore, but he's like, what just happened? I don't even know.
Man. He's like, look, sometimes a sequel or sometimes a trilogy is The Matrix, and the third one doesn't quite get there. It happens.
Yeah, it does happen.
I think it says something about me where I like his bullshit art style more than like just the, I don't know, the schlockiness of it, because Phenomena has always been my favorite Argento film. And that's like all just like inflated horseshit from Argento and none of like some of the fun, but
I know that was all icing and no cake. Yeah. We talked about Argento and I was so surprised Phenomena was your favorite.
Oh, I just love it. It's got the money.
Yeah, but like you convinced me at least that you had a reason for liking it the best that you could describe to me.
Yeah. I should have been a lawyer because, man, talking people into that one is a tough business. But
like that's one of those movies where like 10% of the people are going to be just super into it, be like, oh, this is my movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like his Reservoir Dogs, right? Where it's like, you can't convince me anything he made subsequently is better.
But back to Fontaine, this movie features everything you could ask for in a gritty grindhouse film, but it also sounds great and it's actually shot really well. How do you find the balance between keeping it genre accurate and giving it like a new school stylistic update?
Yeah, we knew right off the bat we were limited in a lot of ways. So some of it was just a matter of, like a lot of pre-production went into this, a lot. Because that's like when you have no resources, the one thing that you can, the few things you can control, you better like right up front, do your best to control them. So spending the time in pre-production, planning the shots out, figuring out how we were going to go from one scene to the next and having that thought out before ever even shooting it. Those are all kind of things that we just kind of had to have planned in advance. Finding that balance, honestly, trial and error. And like when I say that, this is the second attempt at anything exploitation. We made a short film that was like a prequel to this, and it's on YouTube. And I did the visual effects, and the visual effects are so laughable, but people loved the visual effects being so bad in it. And so I think just trial and error, and like I started making short films about 7 years ago, and I'm 41, so I started a lot later than anyone else does. But I've been watching movies my entire life, and I've been watching everything from great movies to just like the schlockiest stuff you could imagine. And so I feel like just having experienced a lot of movies gave me a really good starting point on knowing what I wanted and kind of going from there. Like I knew I wanted a lot of grain in some of the shots, especially, and everything kind of goes towards telling the story. It's not just the frame, it's the sound, it's what's going on, it's the way it's lit, everything, even the sound design itself, it really all has to like support the story or what you're trying to present to the audience. So it's just really trial and error, and I think some things we nailed really, really good, and some things I could have done better. And hopefully I will in the next one.
Well, this is film school, right?
I love that you said that, because I spent $40,000 of my own money on this, and like when I start digging into what film school costs, you could spend $40,000 to $150,000 going to film school.
Oh, you got a flight for $40K. You kidding?
Matter of
Film
fact,
school doesn't immediately like go on Tubi and start sending you checks every month.
Yeah.
Right. So I actually know someone who he helped clean up the dialogue for our film, and he told me he spent around $100,000 going to film school, and now he's a sound guy. He's great at what he does, and he has a very well-rounded background now, but that's a lot of money to spend. All schooling is so overpriced right now, I feel like. But yeah, it's.
Well, I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry, and now I'm here. So
there you go.
Sometimes you pay a lot of money.
Yeah. No, but it is balanced, because it does have that grittiness to it that is so genre specific that hardcore fans of that scene would love. But then it starts out with a very impressive, like, sweeping shot, like a drone shot of the graveyard and the church and the locations. And I mentioned this in the review, is the location is what sets this apart from other like grindhouse type films, because it's not like you're just shooting this in a warehouse full of cardboard boxes, as like everything, or like where you're just throwing up tarp everywhere and you're just like, this is a house and a graveyard, whatever, with just like a spray painted gravestone. This is like, you guys were in a cathedral. Like, how did you convince people to let you guys do these like more hardcore scenes in there?
Right. So it really comes down to a couple things. We shot the short film at the same place. It's a place that's about a couple hours south of St. Louis, and so if you're going to go into a Catholic church, and shoot something, the archdiocese requires that they look at the script. So I knew that I was going to have to find a church that was no longer under the part of the archdiocese. So I started looking, and I found one 2 hours south of here, and a Mormon couple actually runs it, and they run a bed and breakfast there. And so the only strict rule they had was no nudity, and then they asked what the movie was about, and I told them it was about a nun with a crisis of faith after the loss of her sister. And that was the extent of the questions that were asked, and I didn't show any nudity, and here we are. So
you did do something interesting though, and you kind of set up a potential sequel. Was that a deliberate thing you did?
Oh yeah, definitely. Even in the short film, the short film ends with kind of the cue for Fontaine, the Vengeful Nun Who Wouldn't Die. That's, a matter of fact, the exact title we had at the end of the short film. And we joked around about not the next one, but the one after that will be called Nuns in Space, and we have to figure out what we're going to do with that. But
you're supposed to do that by the fourth film.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that would be. I mean, it would be the third feature, but the fourth one in the series if you include the short film. So. Yeah.
Well, Nuns in Space to confront their natural enemy, Jews in space, right?
To confront the Big Bang Theory. Yeah. It's to go against evolution.
Wasn't it a Christian who came up with the name The Big Bang Theory? So maybe it's not so far from Catholic doctrine as we might think.
It's just all eating its own asshole, right, at this point. So you can usually simply tell by the actors' performances how much fun the movie looked to make. And everyone in this film seemed to just have an absolute ball. But I also know plenty of independent filmmakers to know that in the moment with any size production, it's still a lot of stress and work to get a film made. So were you able to enjoy the ride while making Fontaine in real time at all?
At times. And at other times, there were a lot of mistakes that I made just not having enough help and help in the right way. I did all the wardrobe myself.
Wow.
Yeah. And that meant every time that we were done, I transported it back to my own house. I washed it, cleaned it, prepped it for the next shoot.
Jesus.
I mean, and that's even something I'm struggling with now is trying to find someone that'll do just wardrobe for my next feature.
Oh my goodness, right?
It's so much more than what anyone really.
It sounds like such a simple thing, but like when you had to shoot all day and then you're like, I gotta scrub blood out of a frock now.
Yeah, and if you have 10 characters on screen for one shoot day or 5 or whatever it is, and you have to have everything in line. There's a lot of holdovers as far as like the people that were involved in the last film coming to the next one, but I have a lot of new people involved, and I feel that the help I have now, I can finally concentrate more on certain things and less on other, like wardrobe or set dressing. That's something that so many people overlook and don't really think about. It's one of those things. It's like if you don't clean your house for 6 months, you'll notice, but if it's cleaned every week, people don't notice so much, It's just like, it's one of those things. Set dressing is the same way. If it looks, if you have it all dressed, it's there.
It's invisible. Yeah. If you do a great job with set dressing, it's invisible. And if you fuck up, it's visible from space.
Yeah. Asked a question and I went way off.
No, that's what we do here.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
This isn't film hacks. We don't know what we're doing.
Right. Obviously haven't listened to an episode.
Really have. We're big fans of Bad Movie Night.
Yeah.
As a cast, we're like those are our buddies. So
yeah. It's a great crew over there, definitely.
I guess my question summed up in a short-winded way was: were you able to enjoy in the moment just the process, or were you just like, because you took on so much, were you just like sweating bullets and everyone else was having a party?
There were moments where I definitely enjoyed it, myself. I tend to love the practical effects. I mean, I think that comes across, and I love the whole blood. So like, there's a scene where the one nun is crushing a guy's head in with an ashtray. In order for us to get the blood to spray up at her, it was us having the blood in our hand, just in a cup, like a pool in our hand, and we would just swing our hand up and stop it with our other hand.
Oh my goodness.
And there were 3 of us under the camera. For every time she hit, one of us would just, because you can't reload, there's no time. And I was one of the 3, and I was having the time of my life. I just went boop, and blood went up into her face, and stuff like that. The infamous chainsaw scene, I talked about that scene for 6 months at least, and like,
it's the money shot.
So many people that were involved with that, they were just so happy we were done shooting it because they didn't want to hear me talk about it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was actually gonna, like, I didn't write it down because I'm like, that's kind of a dumb question, but I'm just gonna ask it. Like, where did you find that chainsaw? Because it looks so like vintage.
Right. So, I did have a lot of help, and so my AD, along with the person that did my set dressing, they're best friends in real life, and they were thrift shopping somewhere, and they found it, and he texted me. He's like, "Hey, I have this chainsaw, and it doesn't work, but $100 you can have it." And that's what the guy says.
It's the chainsaw from Pulp Fiction that Bruce Willis put down before he picked up the katana.
What a find!
Yeah. It definitely looks the part, I thought, so I liked it. We really tried to shoot for as much of a 70s feel as possible, with understanding overall that there were going to be so many small things that made its way through that we were just limited. I mean, I could still be working on the movie today, removing little references to modern day technology, I'm sure. If you look in the background, you may see a thermostat and a couple, like a digital, and it wasn't that important to me to remove it, because I think most people know they're watching a very low budget movie when they watch this movie, at least with regards to what we had resource wise,
Well, and that's another thing. Like, I think of a movie like The Love Witch from Anna Biller, and she kind of did what you did. She wrote, directed it, but she also did the set dressing. She did all the wardrobes and stuff like that. It damn near killed her. Yeah. So, I mean, that's another reason why, like, I saw so many credits for yourself involved in this production that I'm like, did he have any fun at all making it? Like, it looks like it's fun, but holy shit, like, it was just so much to do. So I'm glad that you got little glimpses of times to actually...
Well, this was work, right? Like, even if your job's fun, it's still your job.
It was, I mean, yeah, it was so much work. And, we talked a little bit before we started recording, and I mentioned Brian Davis, who's the stunt choreographer, and he played the master. And there was a couple people on set that came up to me at different times, and they said, "James, take a breath. Just kind of enjoy the moment. You're doing what you want to do right now."
Yeah.
And having those people around, or having them in your life, but especially when you're under so much stress making a movie, it's so important. I mean, like, to be in that moment and enjoy something you've wanted to do your entire life, and, like, now I feel like no matter if it never makes all the budget back, right? I really don't care.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing what I love. And so I've already won. I've already learned from it. I've already had that experience with all the people that were involved. And a lot of them are friends and family now, and some of them are coming to work on the next project with me, and we'll just keep going, so I've already won.
That's awesome.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're listening to this, please go watch the movie.
Yeah.
I think if you look at things from the right perspective, you won't be as disappointed with things often. Because, a $40,000 budget with a $0 marketing budget, it's really, really hard to try to make anything back on that, and I think in time it'll find its audience, but I don't think it's going to happen in the next couple months necessarily, where it makes all that money back. It just doesn't seem realistic to me.
And this is kind of going off script a little bit, but I was just thinking about it because you started mentioning specific scenes, and again, I don't want to no spoilers or anything, because I encourage everyone to go on Tubi right now and just watch this film. That the people that like this type of genre film, I'm interested to hear what your, like, when you think of this film, what was your crown jewel moment? What was your favorite scene? Because I have to say, just for me, and it was kind of a small spot, but it was really stylized, and I just love the way that you shot it. It was someone died. Trying not to get too spoilery, but there was kind of like
that narrows it down a lot, Jim.
Right? Yeah. There's kind of a reflection in the blood scene.
Yeah.
I just thought that was like, it was really well done, and that just really stuck out to me, and it really it's kind of like living rent free in my mind still. So
yeah,
what scene for you making the film is that?
So the funny, I will comment really quickly on that. That was one of those things where we decided to do that on set the day of, and it was an idea I had. It was an idea I had the day of, like when we were shooting it towards the end of the day. I was like, I think this would look really cool.
It did.
I'm very proud. Thank you. I'm very proud of some of the cuts between the torture sequence and her having a dream. Because it was just it was planned, I took a lot of inspiration, even though it probably doesn't feel like it at all, from like Edgar Wright, who basically edits his films way ahead of ever shooting them, like ever. If you watch any of his movies, you'll notice that. I mean, like, he has to know how he's editing his films way before they ever shoot them, because otherwise they'll never be constructed in the way he wants them to, you know? I think my favorite scenes, the ones that I think came off the best, would be the torture sequence, which is just grimy and gross and disgusting. And then the bar sequence where the one nun just like lets loose with a sword and starts just kicking everyone's ass. I mean, those are my two. And, you know, we put a lot of time into those scenes. So I think it shows.
Yeah, it definitely has a switch in gears. It gets to a point, there's like some character development, maybe more so than what usually is in this type of film, which I appreciated. And then it just goes, okay, you are here for this. This is what you're here for. This is the chocolate cake. Yeah,
definitely. And, you know, I knew that, like, pacing wise, I needed to make sure that we incorporated a lot of that, you know? And like you said, there's definitely some character development that takes place, but when it's there's no need to take your time too much with it. Let's just jump right into it and give people kind of what they're here for in a lot of ways, you know?
So earlier I said how focused this film is targeting a specific audience. And obviously this film isn't for, dare I say, even most audiences, but would you in the future want to make a more digestible film for a broader audience?
Yeah. The next movie we're making is called The Old Man. And I'm not even sure if I've officially announced it. I mean, I've referenced it a couple times, but I didn't make a big announcement. I'm not big on making these big announcements. I'd rather put in the work and let people watch what I'm doing once I have something to show instead of talking about it a whole lot. But it's definitely more in line with like a suspense thriller. The big references or the big influential movies that I'm going to pull from or try to bring influence from is Blue Ruin, Jeremy Saulnier's movie, which I think is just fantastic.
Oh, you said the magic word.
We're fans.
We're in. God, we love Saulnier. Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, like it's a totally different kind of film. Now I will say this. So I'm thinking Blue Ruin with like 10 or 15% of Death Wish 3 thrown in there.
Jesus Christ.
Because I don't want to entirely abandon like where there's no exploitation.
Yeah.
But I want to like, to me, Fontaine, the Vengeful Nun Who Wouldn't Die is like this fantastical world that doesn't take place in, like, it's not reality. There's nothing real about it. It's almost like it's like taking pages from a graphic novel and putting them on screen. That's how I approached it in a lot of ways. So with The Old Man, I want it to be pretty firmly placed into reality with these fun little moments of exploitation, like dialogue, a couple ways. And then we have where the primary character is, he's an alcoholic veteran of Vietnam. And so I started digging into, you know, like a lot of soldiers back then, the army, they would use traps to try to, you know, the Vietnamese, they would use traps to try to like maim American soldiers because they knew it didn't necessarily kill them. But if you could injure one soldier, it took 2 more soldiers to carry them away. So you're taking 3 soldiers out of the fight. So I'm trying to incorporate those kinds of scenarios where he knows those tactics. Of course, he's old, thus the name of the movie, The Old Man. But if he's going to fight someone, he knows he's old. He's going to use his brain. So I have those traps kind of incorporated. But yeah, I'm definitely, like I said, trying to lean more in reality with little pieces of. I don't want to make it too real and too, you know, not fun. I want to have little moments of fun. So.
You're describing like a Red meets Home Alone type. Like the Bruce Willis Red that was based on a very short comic and they made 2 movies out of it somehow.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of fun too. That was the same sort of thing like you're describing.
Yeah. Well, the fun thing is The Old Man is being played by John Mefford, who played the surgeon in Fontaine.
Oh, okay.
So like, he is such a fantastic actor. He's been acting for 40 plus years, and he's primarily until the last 4 or 5 years only done theater. And I'm not saying that actors that don't do theater aren't amazing, but actors that have been in theater most of their life or a lot, they are fearless. And it's always easier to pull an actor back a little bit than to say, I need more from you. And at least in my experience. And so like when they're fearless, they're not afraid of going for it. And they also just have so much more experience because they go out there and they do this show night after night after night. They're not just doing it a couple times or a week or two and then moving on to the next movie. And he's just fantastic. And he became part of the family. So again, like all these little pieces. And Brian Davis is back, and he's playing a good guy for once, like all these different, the priest who snorts coke off the stripper's ass, he's coming back. So I mean, I'm trying to incorporate a lot of the people that we had before, that we had fun with, that were great on set, that are just really good people to work with, and they're talented, and showcase them in a slightly different way,
How did you get hooked up with a lot of these people? Are these just people that you kind of met here and there, or is any of it through like kind of a casting channel?
Right. So it was kind of a culmination of a lot of things. Brian Davis was the first piece of the puzzle for me, definitely. 3-4 years ago now, when we were casting for the short film, I'd seen him on Facebook, and I was like, well, like the character he plays a different character in the short film, and then he plays another character in the feature film, and it's kind of funny. I think it's kind of, I think it's funny, but his character in the short film definitely leans very much into blaxploitation, and so like when I reached out to him, I didn't know how he was going to take that, because obviously I'm a white dude that's trying to make something that leans somewhat into blaxploitation.
Oh yeah, how would you like to be a modern day Dolomite in my? Yeah, exactly.
right. And he totally right from the get-go understood what the role was, and he had no problem with it, and he had a lot of fun with it. And then he was also did stunts, and so like it was just, so that was the first piece. And then he also knew so many people in St. Louis. So for the first casting call for Fontaine, we probably had 40 or 50 people come through. And it was partially because of him and people he knew in the industry. And then like this last film we just cast for, the first time we had 25 people come through the door. And then we were part of a larger casting session. And that was a bunch of different production companies. And we had over 200 people come through the door. And I was just completely overwhelmed by how many people. I mean, like we couldn't see all those people. We saw like 30 people that day. And it was still, that's a lot,
Yeah.
What are your, and again, not with spoilers or anything, but we had already kind of mentioned that there is kind of a stinger for additional films set in this universe. So what are your goals for like this franchise?
I would love to make another one, or maybe multiple. I even thought about doing a graphic novel or some sort of comic book at one point, to connect possibly one to the next one. It really comes down to funding, and I would have to have a significant amount more money to approach this again, because of how much, I mentioned a couple times I spent $40,000, but honestly, if everyone was paid, it probably would have been closer to $100,000 or $125,000. Now, if I remade that movie today, there's so many things that would be better because I would know all the mistakes to avoid, and to, or like if I was making a sequel to it, obviously. But that's also still me just putting in 2 years of my life where I'm not getting anything in return. That's not me getting paid, So I would probably need $150,000 before doing another one. I actually asked the Mallory Stern, the lead, Mary. I actually asked her at the end of the commentary for the Blu-ray, and she's totally. At the end of the film, she was so worn down from all the stunts and all the fighting. She's like, I don't know if I'll be able to do anything for a long time. And then when we were doing the Blu-ray, she's like, when are we doing the next one?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's so funny. You give somebody like, getting their ass kicked for 2 months on set, and then you give them a week and they're like, all right,
let's do it.
Yeah.
My body's ready for more. And Mallory was, she was great as Mary, the quote unquote maniac nun in this movie.
That would not die.
Yeah, we liked her a lot.
Yeah, I know her from playing Dungeons and Dragons with her.
Oh, shit. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I wrote the character with her in mind. Definitely, like 100%.
Oh, very cool. That's a real Tarantino move.
It was always her. And like if you're working with people who've done some acting but don't act all the time, and like I could almost guarantee you that she won't act in anyone else's movies, and maybe she will one day. I don't think she has an interest, quite honestly.
Wow.
But she has asked me, do you want to do another one day? And I said maybe 2 or 3 years.
You just give her a character sheet.
Yeah,
and be like, we're recording our session today. Now cut his dude's arm off.
Right.
If you nat 20 on your strength roll,
you
then,
rolled a natural 20.
Like a cartoon could be interesting because that would just require voiceover work, you know?
Sure. Yeah. You created the entire Fountaine and the Vengeful Nun Who Wouldn't Die cinematic universe.
Right.
No, I will say, so the original idea for Maniac Nun was my idea. The short film was written by Luis Otero, and the feature-length script was co-written by him as well. We both wrote. Yeah, I never want to like not give someone credit because
was this like Lewis's first writing gig?
It's not. No, it was not his first writing gig. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how you mean that. He went to school for writing.
I have IMDb, but I'm not personal friends with Lewis, so you know more than I do.
Right. It's probably his first or second IMDb credit. He has a documentary he made. He lives in New York. I don't know that he's made anything else.
A documentary called Part of Your World.
Yes. Yeah. Which I think is streaming on YouTube. I'm pretty sure. So, yeah.
Well, if nothing else, now I want to play the Fontaine D&D campaign. Like, holy shit.
Oh my God. What a universe for a role-playing game.
That would be sweet.
That would be wild. Yeah. Just pure exploitation where anything goes.
Yeah. It's like a Western and that works. In addition to being a filmmaker, now congratulations, you're a filmmaker. You just made a film, right? But you also host a filmmaker interview podcast, not kind of unlike this, called The Film Hacks. Have those two lanes ever kind of merged into something that helps the other one move forward?
I think that the Film Hacks has done a lot. It's changed my perspective a little bit on certain aspects of filmmaking. I've definitely networked with certain filmmakers that I still talk to today. And sometimes it's introduced me to filmmakers who have their own podcast, which helps me to further promote my own stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's not a one side, that's one thing that a lot of filmmakers or a lot of just creators in general, like when they see someone that has double the follower count or 10 times the follower count, they just want to reach out and like, they want to, essentially use them to promote their movie or show or whatever. It shouldn't work that way. You shouldn't just do that. You should be totally open to trying to create some sort of working relationship almost, like you both enjoy movies. I love movies. Why wouldn't I want to talk to you both about movies?
Sure.
And so, and when I see something on my timeline pop up that you're doing, why wouldn't I want to promote it? it just makes sense to me. It just kind of, it's the overall circle. I think a lot of people, when they're networking, they don't think that through. But like, with Film Hacks, I can't say I talked to every single filmmaker. We interviewed Fred Olin Ray. I haven't talked to him since then. He doesn't want to talk to me.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, there's definitely, I'd say, a handful of filmmakers who are still in the indie space that I try to talk to on a regular basis. Yeah.
Now, we've asked you a ton about this movie, and I'm sure you've been interviewed a lot about this. Is there anything you wish an interviewer would ask you because you have a great answer teed up and no one ever lets you say it?
One thing that I put a lot of work into with the film that not a lot of people have talked about or mentioned in conversation is the fact that we tried not to exploit the relationship between Mary and Lee. Especially like, so in Nunsploitation, it's very typical that they, there's tons of lesbian nuns that get naked, right? Which is all fun and good. And they're,
sure.
And we did try to incorporate some of that stuff, but not with that relationship. I didn't want to exploit that part of the movie. And I didn't want to exploit the mental health aspects of the movie. Because I think that's something that, I don't know, it's just, it didn't feel right to me, It's very easy to make fun of or to bring over more attention to something like that than you need to. And it is an exploitation film, so there's moments where it may overlap a little bit, but I tried my best not to overstep those boundaries and keep that more of something that was like a respected zone. Everything else, fair game. We have fucking Nazis in this movie,
right?
Everything else was completely fair game.
Why was that important to you, though, to kind of press you on it?
So I had, I have a lot of close friends who are gay, bi, trans. It doesn't matter, and I'm not a fan of the way and even till today, I'm not a fan of the way that people in those categories are treated, especially in film a lot of times. And it's getting better. It is getting better, but I don't think it's where it needs to be. And without getting into spoilers, there's something we did that a lot of times movies won't do with homosexual relationships. And I don't want to get into spoilers, but you know, it's very often that it's not a happy ending. Let's put it that way for the couples.
It's a trope.
And
Yeah.
That wasn't even brought to my attention. I didn't know that because it wasn't something that, you know, it wasn't something that personally affected me. So I never noticed it, but someone brought it to my attention who I consider a friend. I was like, holy shit, you have a very valid point there. And like, how would I never noticed this? Why didn't I never notice this? You know? So, yeah.
I think you treated their relationship, you know, with correct deference. I didn't notice that either, because it's hard to pick out something that you expect
right
from a exploitation movie, and then it wasn't there, and then you remark upon it. So, yeah, I don't think I ever would have noticed that if you didn't say that was a specific choice you made. But
it's also,
I appreciate the answer.
Yeah, no. I appreciate the question. It's also one of those things, like if you go and watch 10 nunsploitation flicks, right, you're always going to see the repeated theme of, you know, lesbian nuns. It's constantly, and don't get me wrong, I love nunsploitation flicks. That's why I made one. But
yeah, it's a feature, not a symptom of that genre. For sure. Yeah,
definitely. So it's definitely not the norm in that regard. And it's also kind of a hodgepodge of exploitation films. It's not just a nunsploitation film. You know, it just so happens to have nuns in it.
I kind of appreciate you not being a slave to the conventions of a genre from 50 years ago.
Or its fan base.
Oh. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, but yeah, there's so many different genres that we kind of just dance into for a minute. Kung Fu films, you know, I mean, like there's definitely those Kung Fu moments, you know, like with dialogue that's like, what are you talking about? You know? and then that she even says that. She's like, what are you talking about? But I mean, I don't know if you guys ever watched Kung Fu films. That's pretty normal in Kung Fu.
Not a lot of Kung Fu. There's just more Aikido in this movie than most. I appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think honestly, I'm not even familiar with what kind of black belt Brian has. I know that he breaks a brick every year and posts it on Facebook.
That sounds like strip mall taekwondo to me.
There you go.
I know that Jacqueline Tripp has a black belt in taekwondo. I do know that. I remember that.
So, you know, I'll be real candid, because I watched it and then I DM Jason. And I'm just like, I'm kind of shocked that it wasn't as explicit in a sexual way as it could have been. And the more I thought about it, I kind of like appreciated that, because you weren't just a slave to the fan base, because even though that this is a very niche genre, the fan base is rabid of that genre. So I do appreciate that you're like, this is very much a brutal film, and you're gonna come and you're gonna enjoy it if you're here for that. But I don't have to check all the boxes. This is my film, and that's a pretty ballsy and
I think a 70s nunsploitation film was trying to serve a lot of niches that didn't have options. If you want to see lesbian nuns, you can type lesbian nuns into Bing, not Google. Bing is better for that. You can type lesbian nuns into Bing and you can see exactly what you're looking for. So you don't need your Kung Fu murder revenge film to be that film for you also.
Right.
So like, I think there was some degree to which trying to put a ton of different things, something for everybody, into a 70s nunsploitation film, you don't need to do now. You can really concentrate on what you like about this genre. And I really felt like you thought the most salient element from that sort of genre was like the revenge. So I mean, that's why I asked if there were a lot of Asian influence for this movie, because it seems like nobody's making better revenge movies than the Koreans.
Oh yeah, dead on. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah.
So it felt like you got to pick sort of what buttons.
Yeah.
You know, you get to go into like, here's everything nunsploitation historically is represented. I'm picking all my favorite things out. And to me, as a film appreciator, it felt like you were making It felt like you were an algorithm that watched a ton of nunsploitation films and said, I boiled it down to what I like. And it's so personal from your POV. Mm-hmm. If you asked me to distill 10 nunsploitation movies, I might not have come to the same conclusions. And that was something very interesting to me as a viewer, was kind of thinking about what your process was and what you thought was important. So I really appreciate you saying there were some things that you deliberately avoided so you can double down on what you actually did like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate everything you just said. The one thing that I definitely, I guess, take credit for, or like, I don't think
this is the place to take credit, for sure.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I don't think anyone else on set had probably ever watched a nunsploitation film. So
sure,
I was the one bringing all of that. So like they had really no reference. They obviously read the script and they knew everything that was going to happen. So they knew it was crazy and over the top at moment. Well, most of the movie, but I didn't have anyone else putting in a whole lot in regards to that. Lewis has familiarity with nunsploitation. He was also raised. We were both raised Catholic, so we both had that also. But so I guess I was the ultimate arbitrator of what passed the test as far as what I wanted in and what I didn't from that genre. Yeah.
Well, and what it did, it was made it feel fresh too. It didn't just feel like a genre box checker.
Right.
It made it feel like a movie that someone made.
You modernized a 70s genre.
Yeah.
It's what it felt like.
I appreciate that. One thing, another thing I really wanted to avoid was just trying to, when someone doesn't have a whole lot of knowledge with exploitation films, I will tell them this is Kill Bill with no money. Right, that's what this movie is, and like
I think I DM'd John Kill Bill with less money,
with no money, and that's okay. Like when you're talking to someone like a normie or someone that doesn't really get the references, and that's most of the people. Most people won't know any of the references, or very few of the references. That's how I would explain it to people. And there's nothing
this is an L Driver prequel.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I like being able to take pieces from all kinds of genres and telling a new story. I feel like when filmmakers want to pay homage to something, they make a mistake by they try to replicate it so closely, and they don't have the skill set yet. They don't have the funds. If I try to be Tarantino, I'm going to fail. I'm going to fall right on my face because I'm not Tarantino. I'm not the writer he is. I don't have the experience he has or the budget he has. And why would I try to be that?
Exactly.
But he does take influence from a lot of the same places I do. So I can, that's why I make the comparison to Kill Bill,
Yeah. Kill Bill was Quentin Tarantino, like digesting 20 years of Grindhouse movies.
Totally. Yeah.
And to see you come to a different conclusion was gratifying to me as a viewer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I do. And it was fun. I mean, it was fun. Yeah.
The movie is Fontaine, the Vengeful Nun That Wouldn't Die. It is streaming on Tubi, so you could go check it out right now. I want to thank our guest, the writer-director.
Or if you want to give our guests some money, you can download it for a couple of bucks on Amazon Prime.
Or if you want the Blu-ray, which is the best way to support independent film, you can go to monsterkidfilms.com.
We will put a link in the description to this podcast.
Absolutely.
I'm pointing down. This is what people do. Like, there's a link in the description. The bell icon's over here. Click that and over here. It's I don't know. I don't know the layout of YouTube. I'm sorry. I'm a fraud.
James, Dean, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your film. Where can everyone find everything? We already kind of plugged it a little bit, but plug away. This is the space to do it.
So the production company, monsterkidfilms.com. You can also find the Facebook page, Monster Kid Productions. If you're looking at Maniac Nun, Fontaine, the Vengeful Nun Who Wouldn't Die, you can find that exclusively on Twitter at Maniac_Nun. If you want to talk to me about movies, at JamesD7004 on Twitter. There's quite a few different ways. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, and we also have the podcast, The Film Hacks, which is on pretty much every every podcast platform you can imagine, or thefilmhacks.com, where we talk to filmmakers, mostly independent filmmakers, but we've talked to some bigger filmmakers like Fred Olin Ray, which is I never would have thought I'd have had the opportunity to talk to him. So
wow,
yeah,
Film Hacks is like this show but better. Check it out.
Yeah. With that being said, Jason Emily Alt, where can everyone find you? My
Jason E. Alt
perfect
on
co-host.
the Bird app.
Yeah.
Tweet.
Tweet. You could follow me on the Twitters also at John the Host. You could also follow this very show at film_hooligans. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.